Commissioners Room unless we are able to locate a closer facility, but all those meetings will be at night so that those folks who work will have the opportunity to attend without taking time off from work. We are finalizing the logistical details. Those meetings will start next week. We'll probably do a watershed per week so that staff has the opportunity to compile the necessary information. We will share with you the information that we have on the watershed. We will ask you to share with us the actual impacts that you saw, the elevation of the water that you saw, what you observed. So if you have information to share at that meeting, it'll be a great opportunity to do that. And then, of course, in cooperation with our partners from the Water Management District, we'll answer questions and talk about the studies that are underway and the improvements that are planned in the long range and how we can go forward. So again, on our website at www.pascocountyfl.net, we will post those meeting dates. We also have a lot of email addresses, and we will send notification to folks, and we will do additional press releases on the meetings and where the meetings are going to be held and the exact times by which basin, so that folks are aware of that. You can also always call our Resident Information Center, and again, that number is 727-847-2411. As Annette said earlier, there are probably folks who are impacted that we don't know about yet, because during an emergency you focus on those folks who need evacuation and the emergency, but we know that there are those of you out there who might have experienced some flooding. If you have not already called our Resident Information Center and reported that, we would ask that you do so. That will allow us to map the impacted areas and will help us with our damage assessment and our human needs assessment efforts that are getting ready to kick off. So if you have experienced flooding and you have not yet called to report that, please call the Resident Information Center at 727-847-2411 so that we can know that your area is flooded and we can make sure that we are providing the needs that you have in that area and that we are aware that the flooding occurred in that area. Let me transition to talking about the human needs assessment and the damage assessment for just a moment. We have teams that are going out and doing damage assessments right now in the areas they could get into. Those areas that are still flooded, they have not gotten into those as of yet, but we will be continuing that effort over the next couple of days so that we can quantify the impact of this disaster. We will be looking for two different things. One, what are those damages that would trigger us getting state and federal assistance in here for our residents, and we will also be looking at human needs, as Annette spoke to. Maybe there's an issue with the need for potable water or sanitary facilities, etc. So a lot of work is yet to come. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the first responders, our public works crews, our firefighters, our paramedics, our sheriff's office personnel, the folks in the municipalities who have been out there day and night responding to the needs. We will continue to respond as emergencies present themselves, but as we go into this recovery period, know that we are continuing to respond. Our focus will change, and there's a lot of work to be done yet, and we realize that, and we will continue to be focused on meeting the needs of our residents.
Any questions?
You guys spoke about long-term solutions and having meetings with community members about what those solutions are, what the county has done, what they will do. Can you give us some examples? What are some things that have been worked on in the past, and why is it that some of these residents are telling us it didn't work, and what can you do in the future?
So Mr. Garrett's going to work his way to the mic to join me in case I get this wrong. How many basins do we have in the county?
We have 19.
So we have 19 different basins in Pasco County. That means where the elevation changes and the water that falls from rain or comes from a river flows into a lower elevation area. And each one of them is different and acts differently. The one that you guys have probably been tracking a lot on is the Thousand Oaks, Trinity Oaks area. And we have spent a lot of time. This is the Duck Slough Basin. We have had partnerships with the state and with the Water Management District where we have identified 11 different what we call best management practices, improvements to be made in that basin. They're not all complete. You have to start downstream and work your way upstream. When you're making a repair, you can't make the water flow faster from the upstream if the downstream is not able to receive it. So we have done some of the planned fixes in that area. We have not completed all of the planned fixes in those area. Sometimes when we identify one of these things that needs to be fixed, it requires permitting, it requires acquisition of land, it requires design and construction of large improvements such as the one known as BMP 5A, which is where we had to get a permit to create a drainage slough that had filled in over time through a wetland.
A federal permit.
A state permit and a federal permit in order to get that done. And then once we got it permitted and we'd awarded construction, the rain started and it was flooding and they couldn't go to work. So these are not easy solutions and they are not fast solutions, but in each one of these basins where we have done some study and we have identified alternatives, we will continue working to implement them over time as we get permits, as we get a design together, and as we get the funds together to construct. A big part of the solution will be identifying additional revenue sources. Pasco County has a stormwater utility fee. That utility fee pays for maintenance of the road drainage system and major ditches. It is not enough money to make these major system repairs occur, which is why we have to partner with our state and federal partners in order to try and find funding, and in some instances we may have to partner with the residents themselves, such as what we're doing in Timber Oaks in order to affect these changes. So this is very slow and ongoing, and that is why we want to hold the meetings by drainage basin, so that the residents who are affected in each basin, we can have a much more detailed conversation with them about what we know, what we don't know, what we plan, and how we plan to move forward to make those fixes.
And I would like to add that in Pasco County, we have a challenge, and actually I think I've mentioned this in Tallahassee. This is gonna be a challenge statewide. We have many HOAs who have fallen apart, and it was the responsibility of the HOAs to maintain their stormwater systems. And for many years now, these stormwater systems have not been maintained. So that compounds the problem. I don't know if you
Commissioner,
wanna
moving
address that.
forward, because what we're hearing is, a lot of these permits were let in the 80s and 90s to allow construction and development in these areas. So now that we have identified these basins and there is traditional flooding that we've all been to many, many times, how do you limit construction and development in Pasco County in these areas to ensure that residents in the future won't experience even greater problems?
We have rules in place now where, for example, the last few permits that were given in the Duck Slough Basin, the developer was required to hold back more water than originally he was supposed to. So we are asking them to please help by doing more than you are required to by holding more back. So that's one of the steps we've taken. We have to follow certain laws and rules that are given to us by the state, and
So
if you wanna get
maybe
to
I
that,
can,
but-
maybe I can help a little bit here. So the Water Management District has the regulations on stormwater, and so we defer to them in permitting projects for their stormwater design. And SwiftMud, in simple terms, it's a do no harm rule. So if your land discharged 20 cubic feet of water before you developed, you're only allowed to discharge 20 cubic feet of water after you develop. And they have to retain on their site any water that is replaced by impervious surfaces, concrete pads, building pads, etc. So we defer to the Water Management District to review because they have the staff expertise and they are the rule makers on this, but their rules do not allow someone to make a situation worse. And as the commissioner has stated, we have been partnering with them and some of the developers to, in fact, try to make the situation a little bit better. If you do nothing, then the situation remains the same.
Yeah, but I've been in the same home in 2008, 2012, and clearly, these homes were not built in the 60s. They were built much more recently. So, again, moving forward, is it something that we need to take up with SwiftMud to say, why are you allowing development in these areas that clearly cannot handle this kind of water if it's a repeat event? This isn't a once every 100-year event, it's a once every 3-year event.
Well, so when we talk about a 100-year event or a 500-year event, when we're talking about rainfall, they happen more frequently than every 100 years and every 500 years. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your perspective, Pasco County is no longer in a drought. We are back to normal rainfalls, and in fact, this year we are back to excessive rainfalls because of the El Nino, which is a a warming of the Pacific Ocean that causes
I
a
understand
change
that,
in the
but what I'm
pattern.
saying is why,
So we're having
why
excessive
are homes being
rain.
built in areas that are flooding again and again and again? Because these are the questions that we're being
Sure.
faced with by residents when they come out.
Sure. Florida is a property rights state, so as the developer goes through the development process, the state agencies and the county agencies look to allow good quality development that doesn't make the situation worse, and that in some cases makes the situation better. And we try to look at those on a case-by-case basis and a basin-by-basin basis. And in the areas where we know we have flooding, we look at them harder.
And I think we have an example of where we